Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello everyone, welcome. Today we are going to talk about two very interesting phenomena called Pidgin and Creole. So we'll talk about Pidgin and Creole in this video. Can you imagine a situation where, let's imagine a situation where what will happen when two different sets of people happen to meet in a particular time and space where they have no language in common. And if this contact sustains for a longer period of time, how do they carry out their everyday transactions? What will happen when there is no language common, right? How they will be able to meet their communication needs? And if you look at the history of mobility and migration, for various factors and reasons, it may be war, it may be trade, it may be the process of colonizations, and this entire idea of age of discovery when European forces reached different non-European shores. What could have happened when there was no language in common for communication? So for any transaction they require to communicate. And perhaps this is the reason, or this is the fact, that because there was no language in common among these two sets of people, something new emerged, right? A linguistic code had to emerge to fulfill and meet the requirements of communication, interaction, right? And their daily, everyday transactions. So, Pidgin and Creole are the results of such situations in the history where two sets of people came together in contact, and this contact sustained for a long time, but there was no language common for communication. So in order to meet their communicative needs and carry out everyday transactions, a common code emerged, right, out of the two sources. So community A, speech community A and speech community B, they come in contact, nothing common between the two, no language common between the two communities, and so language X emerges with blending of language A and language B. So this is how a new code emerges, right? And that code was called Pidgin. So Pidgin is a type of simplified language which came into existence as a result of contact between two or more languages. So when we say contact between two languages, of course we mean that two sets of people speaking those languages came in contact. And this situation mostly occurs in trade, plantation, and colonization processes. Now, I told you that no language was common, right? So, two sets of people where set one will have, so this relationship was asymmetric where one will have power, status, and control on resources. So, dominating community or set of people. So, dominant variety They spoke, and that was considered dominant variety, or superposed variety. The other, who were controlled, the you know other set of people and their languages. So it was a blend or the mixture of these two varieties, and because it had something from language A and something from language B, it was not at all a completely new language, but it drew from A and B sources. So it will have a very simplified syntax, word order, because it will serve only restricted purposes. So bare minimum restricted purposes it served. A common code which was negotiated and acceptable to both. So they could both transact in that particular newly negotiated code, which was which emerged out of this compulsion of communication, right? So this is called Pidgin. As Bickerton mentions, it is constructed in an unplanned way because this emerged to meet the needs of communication of these two sets of people, of speaker A and speaker B. So it was not planned; it simply evolved and emerged, right? So it is constructed in an unplanned way, or it is given birth or been developed by unintelligible languages. That means nothing was common, totally unintelligible. And it is not native language to any of the community, right? Any of the set of people, neither of set A nor of set B, because they had language X as the native language, native tongue, mother tongue, language B as the mother tongue of the other group. But this newly emerged language or code, let's not call a language, but of course a code, which served restricted purpose of communication and interaction and socialization to carry out trade and business and other works. It served a very limited purpose with a simplified sentences and very selective, minimally required words, right? Pidgin and Creole are emerged languages in need of communication among people who didn't have single language to use. And for example, among plantation laborers who came from different geographic origins. I quote from Jeff 2008. So this is Pidgin, a very restricted, simplified, and very fundamentally very simple and restricted variety, which emerged out of a compulsive situation where no language was common between two sets of people for transaction and trade. Okay, that's Pidgin for you. So Todd, 1974, I quote from him: a pidgin is a marginal language which arises to fulfill certain restricted communication needs among people who have no common language. That's what we are talking about. I unquote. When we critically examine any pidgin, we have two factors to consider or to ponder upon. Number one, circumstances for its development. So we have to understand the circumstances under which this pidgin emerged. And that was a context situation between two distinct languages which were mutually non-intelligible and no language common. So this emerged as a restricted code. And number two, the purpose of its development, of course, to meet the communication needs, because no common language was in use, not available for the two sets of people to use any common language. So it had to emerge, right? So, Oningbo 1999 claims that what began originally as a trade language gradually grew into a compromised language for wider communication. Right? So, SEPA 1997 labels the reduced structural system into four structures in attribution to Pidgin grammar. As I told you that grammar of Pidgin will be very simple, definitely, because they're not going to this variety was not used for higher social functions. This variety was used for very limited, essential, and restricted purpose. And there was no choice because nothing, no language was common. So they contacted and they communicated and they transacted only in terms of limited, uh, you know, social contacts. And he characterizes four structures. He attributes four structures. Lack of surface grammatical complexity. That means language, the code will not have very complex sentences, very simple sentences, sometimes uh, uh, you know even monoclausal sentences, right? Lack of morphological complexity refers to the fact that you won't have a lot of creativity in deriving words. Words were simply borrowed from the other language. So the dominant language will retain its structure and the lexical category will be borrowed from, the words will be borrowed from the other language just to make a common negotiated code where both of them have this opportunity to own it and use it. Preference for semantic transparency and reduction in vocabulary. So very limited words, very limited options for sentences. These sentences are very uh, you know um, simple, not complex, multi-clausal, not long sentences. So these are the basic characteristics of Pidgin, the variety that we are talking about. Now, Creole is a subsequent development of Pidgin, right? So, Creole is an extension of Pidgin. So, as a consequence of colonial European trade patterns, most of the non-European based Creole languages arose in the coastal areas in the equatorial belt around the world. If you look at the spread of Creole, it is on the seashores around the world. And why? Because these through navigation, through the sea route, these colonizers reached these shores. They came in contact with the host community, the local community. No language common, so this emerged. But a Creole is an advanced and naturalized, stable language which arise out of Pidgin. So Pidgin, which emerged as a very restricted code in such a contact situation, when this sustains for a long time, this Pidgin also expands its scope and it goes beyond everyday small trade transactions, and we see the expansion of Pidgin. When this Pidgin is expanded to such a level and sustains for a long time, then the next generations or coming generations, they acquire this particular variety as their mother tongue. That means because at the time of birth, they're exposed to this variety and they acquire it as mother tongue. So when the Pidgin, expanded Pidgin, is acquired by children of the next generation as mother tongue, it is called Creole. So a Creole is a nativized variety of extended Pidgin, expanded Pidgin. All right. So it is a language that developed or derived from Pidgin, of course, that we just talked about. Creole is an extended pidgin with elaborate social functions and native speakers of the variety who constitute a speech community. So now what we see, something that emerged as a necessary outcome, to serve the purpose of communication between two sets of people who had nothing in common, now extends and expands to a level where this minimal contact is expanded in other social domains, and then the pidgin expands to such a level where it starts functioning as a code for different social functions, right? So unlike pidgin, it is the first language to children of the community. So I told you that after sustained pidgin, after a sustained period of time, this pidgin expands its social functions, its vocabulary. We notice complexity in the grammar, the structures, and then in few years, the next generation children acquire this variety as mother tongue. And the moment this extended pidgin is acquired as mother tongue, it is called Creole. Okay. Uh, if you look at the number of Creoles that survive today across the globe, you can find some Creoles. Some of them have become extinct after this post-colonial period. Some of them disappeared. Some of them were standardized, renamed. But we can find the parent language Creoles based on their parent language across the coastal areas in the world, like Arabic-based Creoles are exist still they exist still exist. One interesting example of Creole is in northeast of India, which is very vibrant, dynamic, and huge, right? It's called Nagamese, Assamese-based Creole. And when you look at the name, Nagamese, Naga plus Assamese, two distinct set of people. They came in contact in due course of history, and this Creole emerged based on Assamese. Chinese-based Creole like Tangwang, Dutch-based Creole languages still exist, English-based Creole languages, French-based Creole languages, German-based Creole languages. Another Creole, there may be debate, but another, broadly speaking, another Creole that we find in Andaman and Nicobar Islands of India, which is Andaman Creole, that is Hindi, and Creole Hindi. Japanese-based Yilan Creole, Japanese Kanban, Kandoku, Congo-based Creole like Kituba, Malay-based Creole languages, Nagabandi, Naga, Ngabandi-based Sango, Portuguese-based Creole languages, Spanish-based Creole languages, Sinhala-based Veda languages. There are some examples of Creole, right? Some of them still survive and they are flourishing and used across the globe, spread on the coastal areas of the world. Now, what are the common factors between Pidgin and Creole? So, we have to understand both varieties of languages are a natural outcome of contact situation, as we understood that when two sets of people with no language in common come in contact, it happens, and it happened in the history. Then lack of common languages lead to emergence of a lingua franca, right? A contact language where they can carry out basic communication needs, transactions, right? Then it can expand and be used by other communities, not necessarily only by the people who were involved originally in that context situation, because it can be learned by other people and it can be used. So other people also joined. While at the initial stage of the pidgin, it is restricted to only those who were involved in contact situation, but it can span. Creole is derived from pidgin, but pidgin is a secondary language, not primary language, as I told you, which developed by speakers of unintelligible languages, right? Uh, Pidgin is fully adequate language. It is derived from the process of pidginization and it is evolved from trade, colonization and plantation that involves many languages, but no one is predominant, and Creole often evolved from Pidgin through the creolization or nativization process. So I told you that when Pidgin expands and starts functioning as an elaborate code for other social functions, and when it is acquired by next generation as mother tongue, it becomes Creole, right? Creole is developed out of Pidgin and Todd 1974. It's a hybrid language basically, right? What are the distinctions? Distinctions that Pidgin has no native speaker while Creole has native speakers. The former is created by adults, but the latter, that means Creoles, are invented by the children. Linguistically, Pidgin's form and grammar is simplified and reduced, sometimes can even die out, but Creole is a stable and developed code and it can develop into a full-fledged, complete and adequate natural language. And we call it natural language because it is acquired by next generation children as a normal mother tongue. Creole often Creole often exists in post-colonial areas, of course, because these European forces reached different shores of the world. They came in contact with local community, and this is how it all happened. Creole may not have elaborate grammatical structures as the older languages do, but however, Creole has definitely more complex syntax and more elaborate vocabulary uh, as compared to Pidgin. So, Pidgin is an antecedent of Creole. Now, let us look at developmental stages of Pidgin and Creole because they are related and one is antecedent of the other. The latter is an outcome of the other's process of development. So, let us correlate these two varieties and see the linguistic correlation. So, situation, social situation and linguistic correlation. If you want to understand the process of development, let us look at this table. So, on the left you have social situation, on the right you have linguistic correlation. So, when we say marginal contact refers to the very limited occasion when these two sets of people meet without any language in common to use for their linguistic transactions. So, marginal contact and it gets you a very restricted non-elaborate Pidgin, that is the linguistic correlate. But we know that in due course of time this Pidgin develops, expands and starts functioning as an elaborate code for other social functions. And in due course, this extended variety is acquired by the next generation children as language, mother tongue. So, when it is nativized, then you find extended Pidgin, right? And then, so after nativization, when the generations start, next generation and then next generation, they start acquiring it as mother tongue and also the older resource languages fade away, and the generation is left with this newly emerged extended Pidgin, which is being acquired as mother tongue. It becomes Creole. So, Creole is a nativized extended version of Pidgin. So, the correlate is Creole. And then, after due course of time, you might see in the history there were movements and initiatives to institutionally support, codify and elaborate deliberate attempt to standardize these creoles, and that process is called the process of decreolization. That means now it is no more a creole, but it becomes a full-fledged standard developed codified language. So this is the ultimate development of the process that is started with a marginal contact and blooms into, flourishes as a full-fledged language. So in social linguistics, if you want to understand the contact situations and the outcome of certain contexts, Pidgin and Creole remain a very significant concept. And today, as we are talking, there are standard Creoles available, and you can find it, on the world map atlas, right? So that is it on Pidgin and Creole, and I hope that you understand the distinction between the two and also a common origin of the two. So, thank you very much.